minimum bill payers in this community. You know, they're not, there are a lot of the elderly, there are a lot of people that, you know, their bills are small, not tight budgets. So the 8,000 customers is where we get all our money. Go ahead.
How is the 8,000 broken down in terms of residential versus commercial?
I can get you that number, but I don't have it on the top of my head. The vast majority is residential.
And are one of those customers also the town of Ulster?
Oh, yes. Yes. And Tech City. Tech City uses very little water right now because there's not much going on. None of our money comes from taxes. So what's this? I don't like this graph, but this is the reality. This is 1992 through 2014, and these are the cumulative rate increases. So IBM closed its doors in 1992. Now this is relatively flat, and that's because we had the very good fortune of signing another 10-year extension to that IBM contract in 1991. So they paid us through 2001, right here. So that's where we stopped getting money, and then from there, it went up 64%. I'm almost done, I promise. We manage just under 1,000 acres of watershed lands. Most of them are in the town of Woodstock. We do own some property in Greene County. We certainly own property in the town of Ulster, and we have easements in the town of Kingston. We pay taxes on all of our watershed lands in the town of Woodstock and Greene County and the town of Kingston. As a term and condition of our water sale to the town of Ulster, we became tax exempt there. But we pay about $300,000 a year to the town of Woodstock in property taxes, not only to the town, but to also fund in the school districts. We put little or no burden on their resources, but we still pay. Everybody in the city of Kingston is a city of Kingston ratepayer, pays taxes through their water rates to the town of Woodstock. We've also heard about the rights of watershed communities. And the rights of watershed communities in New York State are pretty uniform. We have the exact same rights to the Ashokian that Woodstock has ours. So I formed these bullets to really very specifically address Woodstock. They have the right to take water, create their own intake, and take water above our intake on McCollum. No questions asked, that's their right. They also have the right to purchase water out of our system. That is their right. We acknowledge that. We include that in our planning. They have never done that. And if they did it today, no matter when they did it, they would, in the United States, you have to filter all surface water, with the exception that I'm aware of in New York State, is the city of Syracuse and the city of New York. And we all know that those filtration avoidance criteria are pretty steep and pretty expensive. So they would have to build a filtration plant. We acknowledge these rights, and they take precedent over everybody, including our people in the city of Kingston. There's no dispute about that. We have the same rights with the Ashokian and the New York City, but that's all their rights. They don't have a right to tell the board how that water is used in the system, no more than we could petition to become part of the planning process in New York City if they were going to take on a large customer and say, hey, we don't think you should do that because we think you're going to run out of water. Well, it doesn't matter what they do because they still have the rights to the water. And just by comparison, their system uses, I believe, about 140,000 gallons a day and might peak some parts of the year to a little over 200,000. Yeah, and Woodstock has done a phenomenal job, much to their credit, on leak detection and tightened their system up tremendously in the last few years. They've done a great job.
Can you tell the people where Woodstock is water?
From shallow wells along the Sawkill, I believe. Bearsfield Flats, and
the question was, where does Woodstock get its water?
and there have been many times in the past, at least in my tenure, where we have actually, they've had issues with turbidity and their filter galleries weren't producing enough water, and we have hooked them up. Our mains are in close proximity at a certain point, and we were very able to hook them up. We had no problem hooking them up. And but when we do, they're on a boil water notice because they're drinking unfiltered surface water, which you can't do. But that's also not been in jeopardy. So I have one slide on the Niagara sale. And so in April of 2014, they asked if the Kingston Water Department has the capacity to deliver up to 1.75 million gallons in a given day to a site that they selected in the town of Ulster. We, the board, commissioned our engineers to actually see if that was possible, and it was. However, I want everybody to understand there is a distinction between having the capacity to deliver and entering into a contract for that amount of water. At this point, we're still discussing issues with them. We had a conversation with them today. Ulster site, as I understand, is a finalist in their selection. There might be two others that are, and I think because, and this is my own opinion, because of the resources they're devoting to that process, the site in the town of Ulster, that's probably their first choice, but there are two others. So it's a process, and it's going to take a few months to work out. The board has not passed any resolution committing to the sale. A lot of mention has been made about 1.75 million gallons a day. My conversations with the folks in Niagara, they'd like to construct this building in two phases. In the initial phase, with two bottling lines, they would use between 250,000 and a little over 800,000. Because they have two processes that they're going to run through this plant, or what they'd like to run through any plant that they have. And they have, don't quote me, but maybe 20 other facilities, or 19 other facilities. And they bottle tap water in all of their facilities, and they also bottle spring water, which comes from a local spring that they would identify someplace.
Shouldn't this be a choice of the people of the city? I'm sorry.
So that's their process. At maximum build-out, which is some point in the future, they're not going to, they haven't certainly shared with me when that would be. They might use the maximum 1.75 a couple of days a year. So the number that's been bandied around, the board's still talking to them about all different issues and facts, so we don't know what, we're still trying to nail those details down. So in conclusion, you guys, the board's been a pretty faithful steward of our drinking water supply. Things we're doing today are laying plans for the next 100 years. I want to be clear about the last point. Regardless of anybody's feelings, the board cannot delegate its responsibilities under the charter, so this decision is theirs. And they will solicit any input from anybody, but they particularly want to hear from people that live in the city of Kingston. Julie, you got questions? Go ahead.
Okay. Just a round of applause. Thank you very much, Judith, for that information. I know that I've spoken to you in the past, but even in this presentation, I learned so much, and I certainly hope that a lot of folks here today did as well. I want to open this portion of our agenda to members of the CAC, given our table who have, which have questions for Judith. And when we are completed with our questions, when we have completed our questions, then I will hand it over to our moderator, who will then go through the questions from the public. So,
could you give us the names of the board members? Could you give us the names of the board members of the water?
Sure.
Joe DeSico is president, and this is all in the city clerk. It's all official, and it's in the city handbook. Joe DeSico is president of the Board of Water Commissioners. We have Commissioner Dennis Croswell, Commissioner Bob Najelski, Commissioner Al Ronald, and Commissioner Raven Spiro.
What are your feelings on me posting this presentation on the CAC website?
There's one slide I want to delete, and that's the overview of the system. There's security issues with that, but I don't have a problem with the rest of it.
Okay.
Could you tell us what is the sale of the water to Niagara would do for the ratepayers of the Niagara?
I can't answer that specifically because we're not at a point where we have determined a rate, because we're not sure we've made that decision yet. But we would hope, the two things the board has to do is, do we have the surplus available? And the second thing is it in the best interest, and that's the only best interest that we would come up with, would be that it would help to stabilize our rates much the way IBM did, and be able to fund some of these improvements. That would be the benefit.
I was wondering about the criteria that you use for making decisions about contracts with, in this case, Niagara, but it could be anyone that comes before you with a proposal. Are there, I wonder if, how you evaluate these proposals, what the water board is obliged to do, and where it does have flexibility in making those choices. For example, is it all based on whether the capacity that you have, and the decisions based on whether the water is available or not for the proposal, or is there any other kind of flexibility you have, or any other obligation you have?
I mean, the first thing the board did was we started to look at, and we have a report that will be finalized in the coming weeks, and will be public document at that point, so it can be scrutinized and provided to you guys to look over. We certainly, they would look at, do we have capacity? So we look at average daily demand, we look at peak demands, we look at commitments that we've already made, developments that the planning board has already passed and approved that would be coming down the road that we would be supplying water to. We look at all those, and at the end of the day, could this water be provided without impacting our current customers? And if not, because of the flows and pressures that anybody might need, what improvements would be required? We've identified 2 improvements, one of which is solely as a result of, that would be the result of this sale, and that would be that 12-inch main that flows above, I believe it's 1.5 million gallons a day in that line. We need a companion line. We would have to determine, that would have to be a Niagara responsibility. And the other issue is there's a short section of transmission main in the town of Ulster feeding that Vinnie Water Reservoir that regardless of any water sale, anytime the city demand approaches 5.2 million gallons a day, which you can on a given day in the winter when we might have a water break we're chasing down, or it could happen in the summer when it's really hot and everybody's out watering and doing all kinds of stuff. We can't keep that reservoir filled because it's that transmission main that goes up there is a 1927 raw cast iron main, and I don't even want to know how small it is on the inside, so we have to have a companion line at that point. But that's going to happen at some point in our near future anyway. That's one of those distribution improvements that we listed on that capital plan.
As a follow-up to Greg's question before you ask another one is, have the development proposals at the landing and other waterfront proposals been taken into consideration at this point? Or
Absolutely. Yeah, the planning board has approved that. We haven't seen the specifics of it in terms of the site plan, but we have some gross numbers. That plan in particular is a little hard right now for me to quantify until I see the actual what's going to be built in the town of Ulster, what's going to be built in the city of Kingston, because all the water is going to come from us, but the stuff that's going to be in the town of Ulster comes out of that $700,000 commitment to them. So until we see that. So what we've done in the alternative is to just throw the whole amount as if it's all new, all new flows.
Would you know what that amount is?
What amount?
You're using for Hudson?
Oh, the DEC numbers that I believe that they had to use through the planning process were about 500,000 gallons a day over that maximum 15-year build-out plan that they have proposed. I also know that the actual amount is likely to be less because I think a lot of those issues were, and I don't really want to speak to, and I'm not qualified to speak to a lot of that, but I know during the planning process, the argument from the engineering firm that was representing ABR was that those are so conservative that'll never happen. And probably in looking at it, we helped them do a study. We made our flow records available to them. We looked at comparable structures in the city of Kingston and what they're using. And my guess would be the real number is about half of that, about 250,000, but we're still using the other number.
Judith, a lot of people's desire seems to be over the lack of transparency of this whole process. And was there any non-disclosure agreement signed by any of these parties to Niagara?
No, and all this was done in a public, like yours, our meetings are all public. And they were done in a public board meeting.
I know it's not your issue, but do you know what is in the 300,000 plus gallons they want to dispose of that they call non-biological?
I have no idea. None.
Hi, Judith.
What will we-
I
will
don't
we
know
ever
if the
know?
numbers are correct, but I think they're close to correct. Right into here, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, that's, okay. I believe the current usage, the MGDs is around 4 or 4.2, is that correct?
3.94, it's going to vary year to year.
And that includes the 700,000 to the town of Ulster?
Yes.
Okay. And is it correct to say that the safe yield is around 6.1? Okay. So let's say 4 to 6 is 2 MGDs. And we're talking about the possibility of using 1.75. Doesn't that bring us awfully close to the safe yield?
It does. It does. And that's why we're not necessarily, we haven't committed to anything, and we're talking about not what they want, but what they need.
Okay, so anyway, I have the other question, I'm just curious about the composition of the water board. It's 5 members appointed by the mayor, is that correct? Yes. And they each have 5-year terms, does it rotate?
They're staggered.
They're staggered. And how long have the people who are currently on the board been on the board, do you know?
Not off the top of my head, but,
Yeah, man.
turnover's low.
Unfair.
That information's available in the clerk's office. I just don't know off the top of my head.
No, but that was my sort of guess.
Yeah. They don't get paid. God bless them.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not suggesting that they should, but they like you guys. They do it because they like doing it.
I hear that, and it's good that they're doing public service. It's just that maybe it would be good if somehow there were a little more turnover. There might be a lot more interest of people who'd like to be on the water board. That's what I'm saying. I hear you, it's a mayoral appointment, right?
I have a question. So, we've talked before that commercial users are subject to a tiered reduction in times of drought. Is that right? And so also that, can you explain the process of how that works and who falls under that threshold and who wouldn't fall under that threshold in terms of commercial?
There would be a mechanism for exemptions. So, for instance, hospitals, we would we asked them to conserve wherever they could, but, you know, we're not going to tell the hospital that you're going to have to use 25% less than you're using now. That's probably an exception. In previous years, car washes, if you didn't recycle your water, got shut off. Anybody who recycled, I believe there's only 2 car washes in the city. One recycles and one does not. At least that's to the best of my knowledge. I don't, you know, that could have changed. But the last time we looked, that's the way it was.
What about someone that uses processed water for brewery?
The question was, what about someone who uses water such as a brewery?
All commercial, the drought regulations would be approved by the board. When we have model regulations, you have to have them ready to rock and roll. And so I can tell you what we did in the past. In the future, would they change those and make them more stringent? They might. But in the past, the very first stage, when you have an alert, we have asked commercial users to prepare a 15% reduction plan, and when we went into the next phase, they actually had to do it. And then we progressively went down. So there is a mechanism in those regulations for exceptions, and I would think it would be medical facilities, you know, things like that. Nursing homes. Can't imagine, you know, but board will look at them on an individual basis.
You talked about some conditions that can be put on a contract with
Niagara?
Niagara. What kinds of conditions could be placed on them? Obviously, if it's directly related to water, that would be one condition, amount of 1.75 or some other number. Are there any other, what are the other kinds of conditions that could be placed?
Have to direct that to our attorney. I mean, they'd have to be related to things that were within the water board's purview.
Well, which would directly relate to water. In other words, how they operate as a business
Not our concern.
couldn't be included.
Not our concern. I mean, and no water utilities, there's 54,000 water utilities or more than that, a little bit more than that in the United States. I'm not aware of one that regulates what you can do with that water once it enters your premises. So I don't think that we would have the authority to dictate anything beyond the terms and conditions of the sale once we reach agreement on what and if we're going to sell water.
I have a question concerning clarification as to what the agency status is and the secret process. It looked like it had gone from the town planning board to the town board and then back to the planning board again.
Can't answer any questions on secrets. As I understand, it's a town process, and it has nothing to do with the water board.
And did the water board consider the public trust doctrine at all during the deliberation on this matter or in the analysis?
Explain to me what you mean by that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Public trust doctrine, I'm not going to be Black's Law Dictionary, but basically what it says is that certain properties that are in the public domain, particularly water and parkland, have restrictions on alienation. And this may be an issue that can be discussed, I would think.
Certainly bring it to their attention.
But in other words, it hasn't been discussed today.
We've had very few discussions on this because we're still in the very preliminary phases of getting this done. If it, in fact, it gets done, we're having discussions.
She wants Niagara to work. She wants that.
I understand, but today we haven't actually considered the climate action plan.
Yeah.
Today we haven't considered the climate action plan in part of the analysis that Julie was discussing earlier.
I participated in that. We have our own. We have our own efforts in sustainability, and I think I tried to address some of those.
But you didn't specifically address the issues that
No, not today.
And if, in the course of our review, we needed additional documents, what would the procedure for that be?
I can do that. She's crying.
Julie can ask for it.
It's that simple. They don't have to go to the boil, we just ask for it.
It's a public document, and we have it. Why would I make her go to the trouble of spoiling something that we're going to turn around and give her anyway? Just
1961. Do you think it's time to maybe consider that?
I don't know what you mean by full blown. You're talking about the actual calculation of the same yield. We do lots of reviews. Well, nothing has, certainly could be done, but the numbers, the watershed hasn't changed, so there has been no development in the watershed. It's still the same 8.6 square miles. It's, there's been no large increases of development there. There's been no large increases in impervious surfaces. And in fact, the dairy farms that used to be there are no longer there. So the watershed's the same. The storage reservoir is the same. And the worst drought and the stream gauging that we did is still based on the 1957 model. So could we do it again? Sure. Unless they made an arithmetic mistake, I don't expect the number to change. Now we're talking about looking at the feasibility of raising or increasing the capacity, and then most certainly we would do that again.
I'm going to turn the questions over to our moderator at this point. Obviously, the CAC is going to be involved, ongoing in this process, and you all came out here to have your questions answered. So I'm going to turn this over to our moderator, Yolanda. If you would begin with the questions from the public.
The first question, and a number of people asked this question, if after you go into contract with Niagara Bottling, and we don't know if you are going to do that yet, a situation arose where they thought that you were violating their contract and sued you over that contract, which they have done in other municipalities and counties where they are receiving water. Who would be responsible for the legal expenses of defending you, the water department, in such a circumstance?
Our attorney,
It's paid for by,
he's on our staff.
Say it again?
which means the cost
Would have
come to the ratepayers. There
Absolutely.
is no other source of
not unless a big pile of money drops in front of the office anytime it's going to go. I would, not be flippant about it, yes.
The other question that was asked that relates to that, do you feel that your in-house attorney has any experience doing this, and do you anticipate that if they start lawsuits like they have done in Florida and in Massachusetts, that you would have to retain a law firm to handle a large corporation?
Our attorney has written all of our contracts. He's been with us 40 years. This is what he knows how to do.
So this is a disaster.
But then he would be in a position to make a recommendation to the board, because, sometimes in anything, your resources get exhausted.
Right.
So I think that's a question, it's a hypothetical question
It is a hypothetical
that I
question.
really can't give you a specific answer on, because it would have to be determined by the board as it occurs.
Thank you. For those of you who asked that question,
Are we satisfied? No, we're not.
I hear you, and it's an unquantifiable risk.
Except for that we know that this company's already in litigation with the city of Orlando, for instance. We're dropping the bucket next to the city of Orlando. Possibly be to think it's worth stepping in to bed with these people.
That's
How arrogant is it possibly?
the decision has not been made.
Yeah, but
because it's going to be
I
moving.
want to ask
I
other
understand that.
questions that other members
I
of
understand.
the audience
Excuse
also
me.
Very nice.
would like
We
to
have no
have
problem.
answered.
I
Thank you.
realize that's the...
The second question is, and I imagine there has not been time for this, but there is a strong desire to have the CAC, who are researching their recommendations, look into the circumstances and the lawsuits that Niagara Bottling is involved in other communities. There is a question here from a number of people who live near the Cooper Lake Reservoir. Is the groundwater around Cooper Lake and the wells of people who have their own wells in that general area affected by the water level changes in Cooper Lake, and if it went below, like the lowest level, do we know how that impacted?
I do not.
Is this,
Why don't you know all there? I know all there.
yeah, Cooper Lake is in which municipality?
They have a town water system. Just doesn't
Not-
extend,
not-
extend that far.
So there are some people who are not in the town water system.
The town water system does not go up to the lake.
And would it be the responsibility of the town of Woodstock to ask, or you have not been asked?
No.
I'm not sure, guys.
Well, now you are.
But that might be a question for the town of Woodstock in protecting its citizens, because the water department is responsible for the city of Kingston and is doing what they have, what they've been doing, and
What they want.
historic agreements.
They do what they
So
want.
additional information and additional research into that issue, maybe approach the town of Woodstock. And the study, yes, excellent. All right, next question. Besides your agreement to provide certain amounts of water to Woodstock and other municipalities under certain circumstances, do you have any other obligations or agreements or requirements outside of, like, the city of Kingston?
No.
Nothing in writing? No? Well, to supply water, yes, but
She included that, I believe, in your question.
yes. No, it has to do with issues other than your strict obligation to.
No, and we don't have to be perfectly accurate, we do not have a contract with the town of Woodstock. They have a statutory right based on our right to take water from the Mid-Hollow and Cooper Lake. So it's not a contract between two parties, it's a right that was conferred to them by the state.
And they have not.
Except in emergency situations where they have problems
So
with
Worcester
their
have
own
to have the
supplies. They have not, and since 1927, when they, I believe that, or 29, when that right was conferred, they have not exercised that right. But that doesn't mean they couldn't tomorrow. We acknowledge that right.
I think also for the CAC, the idea that this is regional, and that just because systems do not exist, the fact that they perhaps are needed, could, this is what this question is trying to raise to the surface.
So Worcester have the right to oppose it.
You've answered the question of the names of the people on the water board, that they are appointed by the mayor, and that they have 5-year staggered terms. Do the water board members have to have any qualifications?
You have to be a resident of the city of Kingston, and I can tell you our current board, we have a retired New York State Health Department employee who had expertise in regulatory matters as it directly relates to public water supply. We have a chemist retired from the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, New York City's DEP. We have a contractor, a facilities manager. We have management, a person who worked in management his whole life. And the president of the board is a teacher.
If a person was interested in becoming a member of the water board,
Good luck.
they go talk to the mayor?
Talk to the mayor.
Talk to the mayor.
In my 27 years, it is not the superintendent's place to recommend, discuss. It's just not our role.
The other half of the question is your qualifications in terms of, is there a minimum requirement, did this just turn off? Sorry. For your position, and also, besides your many years of experience, what are your qualifications?
Yeah, I have, my educational background is I have a bachelor's and a master's in biology. I have a license to operate a water treatment system. I have a license to operate a distribution system. I have a master's in business administration, and I have this other specific training. I'm pretty well versed and involved with the water industry as a whole, so I have some security and emergency management training. I happen to serve as the regional head of the chair of the mutual aid for New York State Water and Wastewater Emergency Management. So, yeah, I think
If you were to retire and they were to need to replace you, what would be the minimum requirements?
it's a civil service position. The requirements are listed in the civil service office. It was a long time ago, I don't remember what the minimum qualifications or what the qualifications are. I certainly met them at the time.
Okay.
Okay, if you really want to know, you might have to look it up. Say that again?
I started out for the department, I mean, I wasn't hired as a superintendent. I started out as in the plant and was a laboratory. I ran the laboratory for a number of years. So that's my background.
Thank you. Question number 6. The discharge from the plant is not under your purview.
Not at all.
The discharge from the plant, from the point of view of CAC, will be, I hope, something that you'll be looking into. What are your resources?
Actually, just to be clear, we are the Kingston Conservation Advisory Council, which really is focused on the municipality of Kingston. And the plant is in the town of Ulster. And in fact, we might be interested as individuals, but as a CAC, our mission is really focused in this municipality.
Okay, let's
So who does it?
broadly, what are the various entities that you might want to go to besides right here? The plant is located in the town of Ulster. Yes?
The plant would be located in the town of Ulster near the old Tech City site where IBM was.
Right.
And that is where also the secret process would take place, would be hosted by either the town of Ulster or I suppose it might be DEC, but it will be a process that also does not take place within the city of Kingston. It's, it's not, the agency is not the county council. This is not, it's not under the purview of the city of Kingston. Just so people understand that.
For those of you for which some of this language is perhaps confusing, the approval to build this facility is under the control of the town of Ulster.
Okay, we have to go.
So issues such as traffic immediately around the facility, town of Ulster. Discharge of water from the plant, town of Ulster.
Or possibly
Air pollution or discharge of fumes during the process, town of Ulster. The process is state mandated. If a project is complicated enough, sometimes New York State, DEC, takes the lead agency. I don't know where it's at, and the people in this room, neither Judith nor the CAC, would actually know that. So those questions are not within what the people here can answer for you. But town of Ulster has a super... Is there anybody here from the town of Ulster tonight? No, I mean officially. No? Okay. What is your
No,
position?
you cannot talk because this is about...
You're a resident. So the town of Ulster has, I'm assuming, a supervisor, a town board, a planning board, and a zoning board. And most of
So
you
let's meet
who are
over there.
residents, you have elected representatives from wherever you live who are on that town board. So just coming here will only answer some of your questions. Okay? Next question. This question again is both incoming water, which can be answered here, and water leaving, which cannot be answered here. Disposal fluids, whatever. Town of Ulster, DEC. You pretty much answered. The source of the water is Mayflower Stream. That's
Again?
it.
What?
And everything else is getting it from A to B to the final destination. Correct. But it's that stream. Absolutely. Next question. Number 8. Again, waste products. What are the bottles made out of? What are the chemicals in the bottles? Town of Ulster
And they don't care.
You've got to find out from them, because the information, if it exists, is in the application papers and in the SECTRA documents, in the environmental assessment forms, whatever this company is being made to fill out. Those are not here, they're at the town of Ulster.
It also might be pointed out that that's part of the secret process, that it's at the beginning of that process, not the end of it. So there is opportunity to address those questions going forward.
Say that again, Greg?
There is opportunity to address any questions like those because it's the beginning of the secret process.
There's opportunities for the public.
Yes.
Secret.
It's naturally a public process. It's required to be a public
You're
process.
just in the wrong place to get those answers. You have to go to the town of Ulster.
We will. I promise.
Residents of the town of Ulster, do we get a chance to speak?
I don't know what.
Yes, it's a public process. You don't have to show. I mean, they may ask you where you're from, but they won't tell you to leave. It's part of the public process. Yes.
Some people are leaving and there's some empty seats, so those people who've been standing for a while, if you want to sit down, there is some space. There's a whole series of questions regarding what happens during a drought. I know you haven't written a contract, but the questions sound something like this.
I don't think you want to answer anything.
Will Niagara Bottling Company be able to take all the water allowed in the contract in a time of drought?
The answer to that question is, I think I addressed it previously, but our drought regulation stays in, and Town of Ulster is, before the city of Kingston residents have to conserve, they would have to start the process. And as a commercial entity, no, we would be able to shut them right down.
No exception.
But they're not under the 700,000 gallons, are they? They're a separate contract.
If we enter into a contract with them, if there's a decision made to sell the water, yes, there will be a separate contract. And my expectation, since I'm not the attorney that's going to write the contract, my expectation is that would all be stipulated, and I think the board would insist on that. Because the time to discuss that is not when you're asking them to shut the tap off. The time to do that is up front, so everybody knows what's going on before you get to that point. But yes, our expectation, and I think there's, and again, it's outside my purview in the sense that I did not go to law school. I believe there's case law that would support our duty to terminate outside sources because our mission is drinking water for the city of Kingston. I don't know how else to say that.
The next question is a question of financial risk involved in the proposed. Sorry. What do you see as the financial risks involved in the proposed agreement with this company?
There is no written, so it's all hypothetical again. I don't know if the board sees any
So
risks.
do we have to have another
We haven't gotten to that point where we're that far down the line. I don't know how to answer that.
When are you going to have the answer?
The same question was repeated a number of times.
Not answered.
There was, you're right.
You just mentioned a financial risk, i.e. lawsuits that are inevitable with a company like this who's already involved in similar cases. So you're stepping into an inevitable lawsuit with a company who's already showing you this is their practice.
So why are we doing this?
This question is also drought related. Sorry. Microphone working? Yes. It relates to climate change and the fear that the past is no longer able to predict the future. And whether in your deliberations as to what water is available, what numbers are you going to be relying on, and are you going to be able to make provisions for climate change and possible increased droughts, risk of drought?
I don't know.
I don't know how you can move forward with information that you're not certain of. I mean, you listen to that.
He doesn't know.
Are the numbers you have? So we only have numbers from the past. Will the 1957 drought be the worst drought we ever had? I'm sure not. When will the next one come? I wish I knew.
So why? What?
So, I don't know what the time frame is, so the board will look at the best information that we have available and move forward from there. I don't.
Why are we doing
We have
that?
plans in place to deal with droughts. Time will tell. I don't know how to tell you, to look for numbers that we don't have in our experience.
Well, I think if I may, I saw one graph that showed an average increase, an increase over time that was data that showed an increase. Can we count on that into the future? Can we project that into the future? We don't know, but there is some data, and it does show an increase in
There's also, we're modeling a national trend in declining not water sales, but demand. Demand across got less local toilets, because that's been a huge impact. So water sales, and I say sales not in terms of revenue, but in water going through, it's declining across the country. So that needs to be factored in as well. So there's a lot of unknowns, but we will look. We run our hydraulic models all the time to be able to answer these questions.
The next question asks, what is your plan when the daily flow from the stream drops below 500 gallons per day?
We don't put any water in the lake. And I mean, not to be flippant about it, but the safe yield, you have to understand, that's the average that you can count on. But that doesn't mean you get it every day. There are many days that we get no water, and will continue to be that way. And there's many days we get more than 6 million gallons. Many days. As much as the pipe will fills. And some days, no matter what's going by the stream, the lake is full and we shut the intake off. We physically can turn the valve off so the water flows right by to the Ashoka. So that happens all the time.
How many days are in the reservoir? How many days?
Depends on, obviously, it depends on the demand at the time. But based on our current demand, when we're full, it's almost a year's worth, a little less than a year's worth. We use in a year about what New York City uses in a day. I use that analogy with the kids at school when we're giving presentations.
The next question is for the CAC board. The person wants to know if anybody on the board has any connection, affiliation, own stock in Niagara Bottling Company. I'm assuming they're publicly traded.
No, it's not.
No?
I don't believe. My research was only on the internet. It is not. It's a family health corporation. It is not publicly traded to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, who's
And
married?
That's only Googling it going on the internet.
That's a super big family. They're in negotiations.
So who's married to the guy?
I can personally speak that I have no relation to Niagara Bottling.
Nobody family member of the founder or the owner? Anybody on the water board?
No, that you know.
We have, the ethics standards and laws and forms, and no, not that I'm aware of. I would highly doubt it. I certainly don't. Whether this deal ever materializes or doesn't, if for whatever amount of water that we do or don't sell, my salary is going to be the same no matter what.
That's public.
Any idea as to the timeline of the decision-making process?
No, I think that it will be discussed again at our November board meeting. Whether we have sufficient information at that point for the board to consider making any type of a decision, I don't know. But we certainly will be an ongoing discussion until that happens.
Are your board meetings open to the public?
Absolutely.
Where are they usually held?
In our office across the driveway. Oh, I'm sorry, so where?
Where and when?
When they're generally held the second Wednesday of every month. On rare occasion that gets moved for scheduling conflicts, but we always do public notification under the site plan laws.
And the public notification is in the newspaper or where?
Yeah, in the newspaper, and it's also, I believe, in the city clerk's office, and I can we can certainly put it out on our website and on our Facebook page. That's not an issue for us to do that.
Great.
Our meeting schedule is already on our website.
It's on the city web.
It's on our page on the city website. It's already there.
Even when it gets moved, the date on that website changes?
You know what? I can't positively, it should. I can't say that it does, but we will make sure that it does moving forward because of the interest in the city. That's not a problem. Everyone?
Judith just answered a question about the timeline of the decision-making process. And I feel like the people here, I just want to say one thing, and that is that I have a couple things, but if you want to know when public meetings are, the Freeman publishes them on Mondays in the paper, and now and that's what we used to have to read the paper on Monday to find out what's going on. Now there are so many ways that we can find out. There are many websites, and these are all public meetings. I did want to say that Judith answered the decision-making process for the water board. There are many other decisions, and there is an entire process. You have heard the term SECRA, State Environmental Quality Review Act. This has to go through that. And I am not going to talk about it. I'm not qualified to talk about it, but I just wanted to make sure that you understand that there are many decisions by many entities, and they are basically, and the State Environmental Quality Review Act, otherwise known as SECRA, which people are talking about, is one of those. There are many different decisions that have to be made before
this is final.
That this plant would be built, and so on. Thank
Okay.
you.
The next question is,
That's nice.
does the City Common Council have a role in making this decision?
No.
No.
Not according to the current charter, it does not. I outlined vis-a-vis the water board
The board
what
and
their
the
responsibilities
That's
are. One is to approve our bonds. We can't incur debt without their approval. We can't sell real estate without their approving the mayor and city lead.